Here.
Holt, Larson,
Here.
Leeper, Trudeau,
Here.
Saul,
Here.
Wienert.
All right, thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Is there any motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right, any other discussion or comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carried, thank you. Now it's our public comment time. If there are any items the public would like to address that are not on the agenda, now's the time. You may step up to the microphone and state your name and address and address the commission. All right, seeing none, we will move on to old business, which is none. We'll go to new business. And the first item has been withdrawn, so we will move to item number 3. And I believe, Karen, you're going to be presenting the staff report on that?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yes, this is a mic here. This is a request for a site plan review under the College Hill Overlay District. In this district, as shown on the screen here, significant changes to existing properties or new development has to go through review through planning and zoning and the city council. So this is a proposal. This is a vacant lot at 1809 College Street, as shown here on the aerial photograph. And this is a proposal to build a small house on that infill lot. This is just a description of some of the things that we check with regard to the zoning. This property is in the R2 zoning district. The required setbacks in that district are 25-foot front setback, 30-foot rear setback, and the side yards are measured based on the width of the lot. 10% of the width of the lot determines the side setback. So in this case, the required side setbacks are 6 feet. The provided setbacks, you can see the proposed site plan on the left side of the screen here. You can see the house, the footprint of the house is in green. You can see a driveway approach from College Street. College Street would be on the bottom part of the image on the screen. The driveway then leads up besides the house. So the lines are a little bit faint, but that's basically the site plan and the layout of the home on the lot with the driveway. So you can see that the home does meet all the required setbacks. The parking, there won't be a garage, but it'll be a parking to the side of the house. There'll be, there's required for 2 parking spaces for a single family home. And this requires, meets that requirement. Here's some drawings, images, perspective drawings of the proposed small home. The home itself is about 700 square feet. It's just a 1-bedroom home, so fairly small. Some of the things that we look at when we, the idea is that any new development in the College Hill neighborhood, because it has sort of an historic character there, we look at whether a new home would be compatible with it and fit in with the neighborhood. So in this particular case, we look at things like roof pitch, whether the proportions are similar, size of the building, use of materials, and sort of the architectural character and entranceway features of the home. In this particular case, it is a small home. It's probably smaller than a lot of the homes in the neighborhood, but there's quite a variety of home sizes in the College Hill neighborhood. This would be on the small side of the homes in the neighborhood, but it has similar features. It has a stoop entryway with a canopy over it, which is similar to a lot of the homes in the neighborhood. It has some generous window coverage on the front and a front gable design that would be typical of the neighborhood. With regard to required landscaping, you can see here that we have a certain number of points that are required to meet, and they're exceeding the number of landscaping points, largely because the lot is already wooded. There are several large street trees here, and also some front yard trees and some trees in the rear yard as well. So the applicant is intending to preserve the trees that are on the site as they are quite valuable. And what they've done, they've said is if there's any trees that are endangered by the construction, that they will check in with staff and we'll work with them to try to adjust, if we need to adjust the driveway location slightly to preserve the trees, we would consider just a staff level review. So with that, the Community Development Department recommends approval of the submitted site plan for 1809 College Street. In general, the city supports infill development and feels this would be a good addition to the neighborhood.
All right, thank you, Karen. Is there anyone from the applicant that would like to speak to this issue?
I'm here, but just answering questions that are coming.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to make a comment or ask questions about the item presented? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it back to staff. Any questions or discussion by staff?
I think it looks like a good addition to that area. And I don't see anything that raises any flags. Apparently there's not any garage requirements or anything like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
I would move to approve.
A second.
Any further discussion, comment? All right, all in favor, vote. All right, we have all 5 yeses. All right, thank you. Next item is the downtown facade review for this Your CBD store. And Karen, will you make that presentation?
Yes. This is, the city requires a review of any projecting signs that project over the public right-of-way in the downtown area as part of the Central Business District overlay requirements. Basically, there's 2 signs here. One is a wall sign that doesn't require P&Z and council review, but they're showing it on their plans, so we thought we would show that as well. It's a 4x8 wall sign. They have some lights hanging over that. The projecting sign is a 30-inch square. It projects 2.5 feet into the public right-of-way. So small blade sign, 11 feet above the sidewalk, and it's unlighted. The sign meets all the city's sign requirements for blade signs in the downtown area. And so the Community Development Department recommends approval of the submitted facade plan for 100 East 2nd Street, Suite 103.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here that would like to make any comments or statements? All right, seeing none, any public comment, we'll open it for public comment. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to staff. Are there any questions?
I just had a question. You said Suite 103, and then on the agenda it says Suite 107, and it's for the Your CBD instead of the...
Oh, look at that. We have the wrong images here in our presentation.
Just want to make sure it's the right one.
It is the same building.
Okay.
It is a different proposal. I believe in your staff report you had the correct, is
Yep,
that correct? You
that
had
is
the
correct.
correct
Yes.
signage shown in the staff report.
Yes.
So I apologize that the PowerPoint was not updated to reflect that. But it is a small similar blade sign for this other store, which is adjacent to the one that was approved just previously.
Okay.
So the MU2 building right on State Street in the downtown area, they're leasing up those tenant spaces. And so this is another proposal for a blade sign.
All right, any other questions or comments? I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Pretty straightforward. I would move to approve.
All right.
Second.
All right, any other? All in favor, vote aye. All right, motion carried, all 5 yeses, thank you. All right, item number 5, Prairie Winds 4th edition final plat. Dave, are you presenting?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Saul. Yeah, I want to introduce the Prairie Winds 4th edition final plat down in the Prairie Winds development there off of Hudson Road, north of Eric Road, and the Viking Hills, not the Viking Hills, but Meadows subdivision. So this is the fourth phase of that plat. It's located in R1 zoning district on the east side of Ironwood Drive, which is the north-south street there in the middle of the aerial photo. Just moving along, just a little background on this Winds edition. Kind of started out in 2013 for Prairie Winds First Edition, which is just north of Eric Road. And that was the first extension of Ironwood Drive there in the middle of the plat. And that continued north, or actually the east end of the plat. There was 4 lots on the second edition. So then Ironwood Drive headed north to connect a third edition, and then the Prairie West edition, which is on the north side of this plat, which is outside of this area. So the idea, we wanted to set up this original phasing plan to provide a north-south connection between the 2 subdivisions, just to kind of help traffic out so they don't feed all into Eric Road. So everything is distributed to the north and south and eventually back to the west, and then make the connections onto Hudson Road. So we're looking at the 4th edition up in the northeast corner of this area. Future phase, which is mostly the west third of this original plat, that'll come in here in the future as those market demand, so to speak. We actually have the 5th edition, which is part of that outside area there that under review. So you'll be seeing that here in the next month or so, but we're looking at the 4th edition. Again, this is 43 lots on 16, just over 16 acres, and everything is going to be set up for single-family dwellings. All the lots meet the current R1 standards for lot width, lot area requirements. Street requirements are satisfactory with standards. All those improvements are being installed now, and they're ready to get final approval for this. So looking at stormwater plan, everything has been set up and graded to flow along the rear lot lines. So if you take a look at the northeast corner of that, everything's going to flow to the east at the end of the cul-de-sac and then into the existing storm sewer that goes under Hudson Road. And then everything else is kind of modified to flow on the back lot lines and then into other detention basins that have been set up as this plat was developed over the years. So the stormwater plan satisfies the ordinance requirements. So with that, we'd want to move this along. The plat is consistent with the city code, the subdivision ordinance, and corresponding preliminary plat, so we recommend approval.
All right, thank you, Dave. Is there anyone here from the applicant standpoint would like to address the commission? All right, thank you. We'll now open it for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to staff for discussion. Are there any questions or concerns, or? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
A motion to approve?
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll vote. All right, motion carried, all 5. Thank you. On to item number 6, Pheasant Hollow 7th edition preliminary plat, and that is you again, Dave.
Yes, this is the Pheasant Hollow preliminary plat, which is off the east end of Apollo Street in the Pheasant Hollow area. This is located north of Pheasant Drive there on the south by the golf course, Pheasant Ridge Golf Course, and then to the east of Fieldstone there along Union Road. So want to go through the preliminary plat details on this. Is just over 14 acres, creating 18 residential lots for single-family homes. The proposed lots satisfy the RP zoning district. This area is in the planned district, and it basically conforms to that original plan that was approved back in 2003 when we did the rezoning of about 60 acres of the entire development. So those lots meet those standards. The stormwater plan is identified here, so everything is going to be, I should just kind of go through that. So there's an area-wide route along the eastern edge of this plat, which kind of starts at the golf course on the south side and flows through that area and through that eastern edge, and then kind of heads northeasterly up to First Street and then through the Lakewood Hills pond and then into the river. So this is kind of where everything flows through that area. So the east side, the western edge of the plat flows north. There is an existing tree line there, and that's really going to be undisturbed. They don't really need to get back in there. They want to retain the trees in that area. So you can kind of see that arrow on the north side. It's going to flow to the north, and as it reaches that corner of the plat, it's going to head east into the detention basins that are identified in those areas. And those are tracks B and D, located along there. And then the middle of the lot, basically everything will flow into those areas and then through the basins and then again head to the northeast. So the stormwater plan has been reviewed and approved since it meets all our standards, city standards and requirements on that. So with that in mind, the proposed seventh edition, again, is consistent with the zoning, RP zoning district and the adopted RP plan. It meets the standards of the subdivision code. We want to hear some comments from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Number 2, it says details submitted for the cluster mailboxes. That's something we're going to start, staff-wise, going to start looking at the locations of those mailboxes as part of the preliminary plat process. So those are going to be grouped instead of individual mailboxes. The post office is going to that kind of route. So we will be identifying those locations. I should say we as the city of Cedar Falls, and set those up as those improvements are made and the streets are put in. So the last line, the drainage along the southern edge, we had some comments from nearby residents, so they're going to plan a route through that southern edge so it doesn't flow to the south. It's going to head to the east, which is identified on the south edge of the plat. So all the drainage is going to be collected and transferred to the east and then head north down, as you can see on the south edge. So that has been added to the plat. So with that in mind, it's fairly straightforward, meet all our requirements, so we can recommend approval and move this along to council.
All right, thank you, Dave. We'll open it up to the applicant. Is there anyone here that wants to address the commission from, okay. We'll open it for public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishes to address this item? If so, you may come to the microphone, state your name and address.
I'm Willis Roberts. I live at 4018 Wynwood in the Fieldstone Addition. I'm a property owner and a member of the Homeowners Association and a member of the board. Came this evening to express concern and interest with regard to the tree line on the west edge of this property and on the east for property owners on the east edge of Fieldstone. And my question has been answered. I do appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That was, I did understand tree line undisturbed, right? They're looking for some privacy there. That would serve both the new lots and the existing. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Bruce Neuendorf, 211 Sandalwood Circle in the Fieldstone Addition also. And I guess I'd like to clarify that. I thought I heard they want to keep the north side tree line, but I didn't hear any comments about their west side tree line. So we were behind there also. So did they give any specifics about the west side tree line? I think that's what the concern was.
All right.
Hi there, good evening. Steve Trosky with CGA Engineers. A great question. One of the best attributes of this property is the wooded nature of it. And so as the developer moves forward on the project, one of their goals, both for being a good neighbor, but also for their own economic interest and the value of the property, is to keep as many trees as they can. They realize that's what sells the property. That's what makes it unique. So can't guarantee that there won't be any trees that won't come down, but the intent 100% is to keep as many trees as possible, particularly along that west line. It's kind of mucky and the drainage flow goes back there, so there's not a lot of utilitarian value back there anyways.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public would like to come up and address the commission? All right, we will close public comment and bring it back to commission.
Seeing that all the tree concerns of the neighbors and that it's good development's planned, I don't see a problem with this moving forward.
I've got maybe a staff question, maybe some clarity. This was previously a preliminary plat that was approved before, is that correct? Or a modification of a previously approved preliminary plat?
Yeah, this was identified in the 6th edition preliminary plat, but it was a larger tract of land. So what they're doing in the 7th phase is actually splitting those lots up and creating those developable lots, building the street.
So there's not been previously a preliminary plat on this tract?
Not on this tract. It was part of the RP concept plan.
Okay.
But that was just the concept when they rezoned it in 2003. So this has always kind of been set aside for another cul-de-sac or the Apollo Street connection for additional lots back there.
Okay.
Any other items for discussion or questions for staff? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll second.
I need a first.
I'll move.
All right. Leslie's
Sit in a
first.
different seat.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All right, moves forward with 5 yeas. Thank you. All right, on to item number 7, the land use map amendment, West Fork Crossing. And Dave, that's you again.
Hooray. Yeah, this is an introduction and discussion only for tonight. We want to look at a land use map amendment for approximately 119 acres, again, on the west end of town. This is off of Union Road and north of 27th Street. So the property's in an A1 zoning, and part of the rezoning, we want to start with a land use designation, take a look at the land use map, see what those categories are, and see if there's any adjustments we want to make to that. So that's what I'll go over in this portion. So what we look at is a current land use map, which is part of the comprehensive plan back in 2012 that was approved. And as you can see, some of these areas within that 119 acres that's identified in that red polygon there in the middle, you can kind of see there is mostly low density residential is identified in yellow. The green areas, greenways and floodplain districts, and then there's a neighborhood commercial zone along Union Road there. So those are those areas we want to take a look at. Again, just going down the characteristics of the greenway and floodways, we look at floodplain buffers. I got a slide on the floodplain, I'll go over there in a minute. And those are identified in those areas. Parks, recreational areas, environmentally sensitive areas. There's some wetlands in this area. And this also can be incorporated into stormwater management as part of future development, and want to look at trail systems and how that is connected to what is planned and what runs through this area. Also, the commercial mixed use characteristics basically is identified as low impact commercial uses with some mixture of uses that could be some upper floor residential development, but that's intended there for neighborhood commercial support, and again, that's identified along Union Road there. So again, looking at the floodplain, as you might remember, we're looking at New Aldea site just north of this, and that floodplain kind of follows the Dry Run Creek, or the University branch of Dry Run Creek that runs along the north side of this area. And that's the existing floodplain, as you can see, and it kind of flows through Waterbury Drive there in the Lexington Heights there just to the east of that, and then kind of flows down towards Hudson Road into the detention basin north of the dome. And then there's a little finger on the south end that kind of extends up a little bit off of West 27th Street. So if you kind of compare the floodplain with the land use map on the right side, land use is a little more expanded than that. I think we want to tighten that up a little bit, and that's part of this review is taking a look at those areas, kind of modify those floodplains. So with that in mind, we propose the following here is reduce those greenways and floodplains just to kind of correspond to actually where they're at, and then look at the drainage patterns too. So mostly Mostly it's along that University branch there on the north side of the plat. And then, so this will basically open up some areas for open space, again, detention, have a good idea or opportunity to create neighborhood parks in this area. You can kind of know that there's nearby parks of Robinson Dresser on the north side and Birdsell Park, the golf course, but really we're looking at neighborhood parks and playgrounds and that kind of thing. So that's something that we can work with the developer, maybe set aside some areas or incorporate those into some of their open space and detention features as those plats come before us for future consideration. Again, change the neighborhood commercial area to low-density residential. We look at commercial areas more at the intersection nodes, those major intersection nodes. So we have some of that just off the south end of this down at 27th Street. And then there's some more commercial areas north up on First and Union Road. So I think it's a better fit for that instead of kind of more of a mid-block area. I mean, they're surrounded by residential development. I think we want to maintain that low-density area in that area. So with that in mind, I would just want to present those ideas and gather some comments from the commission and the public on those land use changes.
All right, thank you very much, Dave. Is there anyone here from the applicant that wishes to speak? Okay.
Tim Brahan with ISG. I guess our one comment on that piece would be, just from a development standpoint, it would really make sense to keep that entire area that David's outlined as the R1 and move all of the higher density stuff to the south, just from a development standpoint. And then as far as the greenway, we just trying to get clarification on the flexibility of how those spaces really fit in. Is it more of a space requirement, or are we held to the letter of the law of how that map looks?
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from applicant? All right. Seeing none, we'll open it for public comment. Is anyone from the public wish to speak to this item?
I'm Mike Goen. I live at 1712 Union Road. I really don't know too much about this, but since that's been farmland for a long time and it has changed over the years, we've gotten a lot more water coming across our properties going to the north. And so I guess anything that's going in there, I'm concerned about how they're going to handle the water migration, because we're now taking water through our properties. There's about 4 or 5 lots there, and then going into where the new Aldea basically is into that waterway. So it's been kind of a problem of cutting off the back half of our property. So, and I sure wasn't aware that I had a partial commercial area going across my lot. And I definitely don't want to see strip malls there, and I'm not really too anxious to see multi-person housing. And I'm not sure where the roads are going to come into this area. It looks like you're going to feed everything into Union Road, and you know, that's a tremendous amount of traffic that would come down, and if it's right next to my property, that's not very desirable.
All right, thank you. Anyone else from the public wishes to address this item? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission. So basically what we're discussing here is amending the land use map as proposed, right? And just discussing.
Yeah, the
bring back.
proposal is just a change in those areas on the land use map to pretty much low density. Yeah, he was right. There are existing houses along Union Road right now. They're large lots. They've been there for a while. There's a couple new ones, and yeah, it did show some commercial there that we just kind of want to change that to what it is now.
All right. Any other discussion or questions?
Could you talk a little bit about how we're analyzing the water flow in stormwater management?
Yeah, that'll be addressed when we do the platting on that. So that's part of the platting requirements. So the first step is, again, as we look at rezoning, we want to take a look at the land use And for the most part, the proposed development of R1 zoning, which would be the next item under discussion, follows that land use, but again, trying to tighten up some of those floodplain areas that are really outside the zones, and then changing that land use and zoning, and then move it into plating. So those areas will develop stormwater detention areas, flow routes through the subdivision, away from the neighboring properties, and get more of a controlled release and controlled rate through that area.
I guess to expand on that a little bit, it looks like there's a change in the line on the Greenway floodplain at the northeast corner there. Is that moved line, is that kind of arbitrary for now, subject to platting at some point?
Well, that previous area really dipped down into that southwest corner. As you can see on the map, how it curved down to the southwest corner and into that other area next to the orange, which is medium density residential. So really land use really doesn't follow lot lines, so to speak. It just gives us an identification and what could be planned there. So it was really just kind of moving that, tightening that up, moving up to the north to accommodate some of those floodplains and wetland areas in that northeast corner of the plat.
So it is speculative in a sense and subject to a preliminary plat proposal.
So I wouldn't call it speculative. What the land use map is intending to show is that there are floodplains there that need to be taken into account when development occurs. So when we do get this land use map, while it's conceptual in nature, doesn't follow exact lot lines, that sort of thing, when we do get then a subdivision request in, we're going to be looking at this land use map and saying, yes, it looks like there are floodplains there that we need to pay attention to. And so then we'll get down into the details of where those floodplain boundaries are and make sure that when they're setting up their lots and their street pattern, that it's taking that drainage and the floodplain into account.
Okay.
And one of the public comments was about the street design. So I guess it's not on this, but that's something we'll have to look at later, right?
Yeah, and that's the same type of thing. We would use the same principles that we use for any neighborhood, that we want a well-connected street pattern in the neighborhood so that people can circulate throughout the neighborhood and don't all have to go on one street to get in or out of the neighborhood. So we're gonna be looking at all those types of things when they bring in a subdivision plat.
All right. What do you need from us just to move it forward? Do we just say vote to move it forward, or it's
No.
just discussion?
We'll bring this back
Okay,
at the
you'll
next
bring it
Planning and
back,
Zoning
okay.
Commission.
All right. All right, any other questions all right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 8, which is rezoning from A1 to R1, the West Fork Crossing, and Dave, you have that again.
Yes, so this is the same 119 acres. The proposal is to rezone that from A1 to R1 residential at the, again, off of Union Road. As part of the rezoning criteria, we take a look at some elements there. And again, first one is, hey, is the rezoning consistent with the future land use map? Is it accessible to existing utilities, sanitary sewer, water lines, those kind of services? And does it have adequate roadway access into the subdivision, proposed subdivision and rezoned area? So moving along with the rezoning, we take a look at the land use map, and again, the amendment would be focusing on those greenways in floodplain to low density, and that neighborhood commercial along Union Road to low density residential. So the planning and zoning would have to amend the land use before we can proceed with that rezoning request. So that's the first criteria. Moving along with utilities, there's an existing sanitary sewer line that again runs through that drainage way along the University branch. I kind of laid out some lines there. It does run through the northern edge of the proposed rezoning, and the 119 acres basically will drain into that sanitary sewer line there. Everything to the south will have to go south There is a sewer line south of 27th Street, so that'll be something in the future. I did not put all the sewer and water lines in the Lexington Heights subdivision to the north and east of that, but they do extend into that subdivision. There's water, existing water that runs along 12th Street and then down Union Road, and it ends just at the south corner of the Wild Horse Addition on the west side. So that will extend into this new development and tie back into Waterbury Drive in the Lexington subdivision to provide those water loops. So the sewer and water utilities will be extended as this develops. Moving along with roadway access, Karen alluded a little bit on this. So when we set up this rezoning and proceed to plat, we want to make sure that that has those connections to existing roadways along Union Road. We don't want to isolate this development, so we look at, again, those connections to provide, to disperse, circulate traffic in and out of the development, to provide other access points instead of just one area. And then we plan for connections in all directions. So we look at something heading to the west onto Union Road. The idea would to extend development to the north and connect into that New Aldea development that was originally looked at previously, tied into Lexington Heights. And then we got a possible school site there down at the southeast corner of that, so we want to make connections to the south and east of this area. So these are something that we'll take a look at as the plat is developed. And then as we move along and development occurs in this area, we want to monitor that traffic flow, Union Road, West 27th Street, make sure they can support that traffic. There may be some upgrades in the future in these corridors with additional turn lanes and capacity improvements. But right now, Union Road is set up to accommodate this development. Right now, it carries about 1,500 vehicles a day, and that type of corridor or facility could do up to 3,000 vehicles an hour. So, and those are the peak hours, morning peak and PM peak. So it still has room to grow in those areas as traffic continues. Other factors we look at is, as we look at R1 rezoning for those 119 acres, it's just an extension of the existing R1 district from the north and east. There's other surrounding residential areas to the north and west and then south. And again, the rezoning is really the first step in this developmental process. So again, we'll look at subdivision platting for a preliminary and final plat. How do they phase that? How do they make those street connections? And along that, we look at stormwater to review, making sure it flows right. They have adequate drainage and detention. It releases that water at a slower rate according to our standards. And again, that water cannot impact adjacent neighborhoods. So as the gentleman commented earlier, looked at to improve those conditions, as right now it's uncontrolled, and then we'll have the plan to have a more controlled system in this area. So just again, moving along, we want to add some or gather some comments from the commission and the public, and then schedule a public hearing along with the land use at the next meeting on August 28th.
All right, thank you. Does their applicant want to make any more statements? All right, anyone, we'll open for public comment. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the commission.
So is there any other information you would like us to bring back at the next meeting related to this rezoning? One thing we look at with rezonings is it is an upzoning from agricultural use to residential use. So we want to make sure that if there's any comments that you want to make about what you want to make sure that occurs during when we're thinking about developing this property. There is a large potential for a lot of new homes in the area, and there's the new high school in the area. So anything that you have questions about and how a new neighborhood could grow in this area and what kind of services and amenities need to support that residential development versus agricultural use, which it is currently. So that's the kinds of considerations that the commission can ask questions about and think about as you vote on a rezoning.
I would be curious if you could provide the projected population growth and what segments of population we would foresee in the next several years.
I'm interested in the traffic flow and how that's all going to work, especially with that school coming in and all of that. I'm very interested in how that, curious how that's going to work. And then also the water, because we've been hearing from the new Aldea thing in Lexington Heights and now this gentleman tonight. So I'd be very interested in how all that water is going to get not dumped on the next property. Anything else? All right, so this will move forward to the next meeting, right? All right. That's the last of our items. Are there any commission updates?
I don't have anything for you tonight, unless you have any questions for me.
I think we're good.
Okay, anybody going to be absent at the next meeting that you know of? Any vacations or anything coming up for the next meeting?
I plan to be here.
Okay.
All right. All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Second?
All right, motion to adjourn has carried. Thank you.